Hey everyone, this is Jorge, and I am with University Recreation and Wellness at the University of Maryland. I'm here today to talk about safety and risk management. This is oftentimes a subject that we find pretty challenging to explore since, a lot of us have this responsibility and we really don't know sometimes who's in charge. Something that we've done at the University of Maryland is we've been able to centralize with the addition of my new position. So I'm excited to help you all, kind of give you some food for thought and kind of open up the floor to any questions or anything if y'all want to connect later on. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, so today the name of my presentation is This is Not a Drill. We're going to be assessing our safety programs. I am speaking on behalf of Rec Talk. It's a great opportunity to connect with other professionals in the field. So I definitely encourage you to follow them after this at their YouTube channel or their Instagram and learn a little bit more about what other institutions are doing. So just kind of getting started, a little bit about University of Maryland. We have several different facilities of all different sizes. And something that's really challenging is understanding how everybody is kind of interacting and communicating. So, before you get started with your program, something you really want to look at is, what is going to be the priority? What is going to be the facility space that you're going to have to tackle first that may contribute to your overall success in creating policies and communication that could overlap and benefit the greater department? So a little bit more in depth, and excuse me as I move around, a little bit more in depth about our facilities. We have over 400,872 square feet indoors. Yeah, that's a lot of indoor space. We have 205 acres of outdoor space and around 950-ish student employees. So you can already tell we are covering a lot of ground and we have to impact a lot of student employees to then keep our community safe. So the first thing that I went about when I was looking at risk management was really figuring it out what risk management meant to University of Maryland. When you sit back and you look at your department and you look at the historical context, everything that, all the resources that have been developed, that's fantastic. But the first thing is, understanding what is your department trying to do? Where are you trying to get to? How are you trying to reestablish or enhance what you already have? And it doesn't have to be pretty. It can look as broad as it can be as broad as you want of a definition, or it can be as simple as a couple of bullet points. But getting started with that conversation is super important. So understanding the risk management umbrella, this is such a huge umbrella and there's so many different components that fall into this umbrella that you can't change everything in one day. That is just something that you have to understand. Or whoever's tackling this large project has to be okay with being able to prioritize and split up what the responsibilities are. So a little bit how I looked at risk management at University of Maryland were 4 key components: certifications, the personnel and the training, the resources and the tools that currently existed, and then the logistics and operations. So today we're going to go ahead and dive in a little bit more into each of these components and the key questions that I asked myself before I even started changing anything. I wanted to learn about what was happening. I started off with creating a goal. At UMD Recwell, one of my goals was really to create this sense of confidence and competence among the team. I knew that if our student employees were trained well and they felt confident in their skills, they would be able to carry on that message. They would be able to keep our facilities safe and promote the culture of safety that we were aiming to achieve. And so kind of the first questions that I started were asking myself were, what were the immediate priorities? What did the support look like in terms of, the student employees, the professional staff? What were their skill sets? Were there any limitations or constraints? For some institutions, it may be budgetary. For other institutions, it may be a numbers game. You may just not have enough personnel support to cover or achieve everything that you're setting out, and that's okay. But asking yourself these questions is very important up front. And so once I kind of started thinking about what my priorities were, I developed a model that by all means, there's tons of different models, but it's something that when you're looking at risk management in your department, you have to prioritize what it is that you are going to be focusing on at the beginning. And so for me, it was this idea that, represented instruction. That was everything to do with the CPR courses we were teaching, the type of education we were delivering that came from Red Cross or other entities. It was followed by development, which, how are we developing our student employees? How are we keeping them engaged? What resources am I providing them to follow through on all the instruction we were giving them? Education came next. When it came to education, it was focusing a lot on the tools, on the tangibles, what kind of resources were available for them to self-educate themselves, even outside of the workplace. And then lastly, assessment. It was this idea of, now that we've taught everybody the skills, how do we go about checking and assessing that they are retaining the information and that they can perform? And so a couple of the questions, that I ask myself when thinking about certifications is, how well do you know the standards of the entity that you're working with? At UMD, we work with American Red Cross. Something that I had to learn really quickly was, the different levels of training, the different certifications and the requirements that go into teaching some of the courses, and then also holding staff members accountable about retaining those certifications before they expire. So, is there a separate budget that your department allocates for these certifications to happen? Are there certain, expectations, and are they realistic and sustainable? It'd be great to certify everyone, but that's not realistic all the time. When it came to personnel and training, some of the questions that I asked myself, are you tackling this challenge completely by yourself? Or, who else is responsible? Do you have a risk management committee? Are there others in your department on the same page, or are they just waiting for your guidance? I think it's super important to have those conversations up front, understanding, the different levels of support that are being offered, so you're not reinventing the wheel. You want to make sure that, you have the resources that you need, but you can also get people's feedback and their opinion and thoughts, because, a great idea may be great for you, but it may be a challenge to be fully carried out by the entire department. And so definitely take a step back to look at what structures exist and what structures don't exist that you could either enhance or completely redevelop. All right. So when looking at resources and tools, this is a pretty hard one. Something that I found at UMD was that we had tons of different resources and tools, but they were all spread out. Something that you want to do is, do a collection of tools, whether it's EAPs and how in PDFs, or it's, completely separate resources, e-learning components that have been created by program managers. Take that time to open up the conversations. And so, who are they accessible to? Are there any workshops that have been created or presentations that managers have already been delivering? Are some better than others? That's your job to assess and see what has been working and what has not been working. And then also understand that in this day and age, students are learning at completely different rates. We have those audio learners who can just listen to something and retain the information. And there's others who need very visually stimulating resources for them to retain the new information. And so making sure just to be mindful of, the different learning styles. And then lastly, logistics and operations. How are you practicing what you preach? Is there unity within your community? Is everybody on the same page? Or do you have some people leading completely different trainings than those that are actually on the floor, boots on the ground? Making sure that there is some consistency in the standards and expectations that your department develops together is important. So a couple of achievements at Maryland, as we're a developing program when it comes to risk management, we have seen significant increases in participant engagement when it comes to our blended learning courses with Red Cross. I've had the opportunity to restructure a couple of those trainings so that students feel as if they're connecting what we want in the department and our expectations and what they're learning with Red Cross. And so that's super important to make sure that you feel comfortable in modifying and adding your own flavor to it and your own spin, so you can make it your own. We've also seen increases in review sessions and the interaction and the level of confidence that students are developing because of the transparency and the time our student safety instructors are taking to develop our employees whenever they are assessing and doing audits. And just in over 2.5 weeks, we were able to achieve over 200 staff members get audited in their safety skills with a 76.9% passing rate and only a 9.4% fail or an auto fail of 13.8%. And so, this is still developing. We have a huge population to tackle, but recording this data, having it readily accessible to see where you are doing well and where you are not is very important. And then lastly, a couple of tips for success. Make sure that you're taking the time to assess and review what's already in place. You don't want to reinvent the wheel, but you also want to be mindful that some things you can take into the future and other things you can't. Make sure to consult your team for feedback. Strategizing before implementing is always going to save you a lot of time and ensure that you are being as effective as possible. Present, train, and integrate, making sure that you are delivering the content so it's easily digestible, that you can come back and evaluate and revisit. That's always something that's going to save you a lot of time. And then just championing success, right? The small wins are very important to recognize and to make sure that you are taking the time to bring those to light, because that'll show that you are in the right direction with your department. All right, well, that's the presentation for today, everybody. I want to thank you for taking the time to listen. I encourage everybody to subscribe to Rec Chat on YouTube or follow the Instagram for more content like this. And if you'd like to connect, my email is listed below. Feel free to reach out to me, and I'd be happy to sit down and have a conversation over safety with you. All right, everyone, have a great day.